Welcome to the Longest Take podcast. Thank you for tuning in to the Longest Take podcast. In today's episode, we are joined by Michael Litwak. Michael is a Brooklyn-based filmmaker that was born and raised in Los Angeles. He likes to tell character-driven stories that embrace the absurd, often through a lens of classic genre filmmaking. A big piece of it being sci-fi, which I personally love very much. His 2023 film, Molly and Max in the Future, is a fantastic indie film with awesome sci-fi elements. I absolutely recommend you check it out. It's on VOD, it's on Amazon. Please see it at your earliest convenience. And please welcome Michael to today's episode. All right, so what are your top 5 favorite movies?
I'd say Jurassic Park, Amelie, The Graduate, Princess Bride, and Annie Hall.
So I will say off the bat, the Amelie edition there, I could kind of see it in the work of yours that I've seen, in the sense of like there's like a, I don't know if you want to call it like a quirkiness or like kind of fantastical too. You get a little bit of that in Amelie. I could definitely see that with some of your work.
Yeah, definitely. I love, I think movies can be so many different things. And, I tried to pick 5 movies that are across the spectrum of what movies can be. And, I think Amelie was a movie that I saw when I was, 15 or 16, and it kind of blew my mind. And I didn't realize you could move a camera like that or tell a story like that was so heavily kind of narrated and stylized. And, it kind of created this magical world out of Paris, which is magical to begin with. But, it really is just this very specific view of the world, and jumps across time and space, and really, it is so good at what it does. And I love the stylized color palette. I love the kind of how many little kind of asides there are throughout the film. And I went and saw it a couple months ago, I think, in they did a screening. I think it was like the 20-year anniversary or something, but it held up, and I still think it's magical. And I think that opening sequence is like one of the best opening sequences of all time.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm envious that you got to see it in a theater, because I think that'd be awesome to be able to catch it.
Yeah, the music too is such a huge part of the movie, and it really has, the rhythm and the pace of that film is so it's so great. It really just pulls you in and takes you for this ride, and then has this beautiful soundtrack that really complements everything and really creates this sense of wonder while you're watching it.
Absolutely. And there's one piece in particular, I don't know the name of it because I think they're all in French names, but there's that one piano piece that I'm sure you're probably familiar with it. I think it's the one that sticks out to most people.
Yeah, definitely. The Jan Tiersen, I think, did the music, and that soundtrack is just amazing. I'll listen to it when I write, and it takes me back.
Yeah, that's great. And by the way, is my screen going to distract you? Because I noticed something's wrong with my webcam. It keeps like glitching.
Yeah, it's okay. It happens. It's not too bad. Don't worry.
Because I know on your side of things, the screen's bigger, right? It's reversed than how I'm seeing it. So I don't want you to, that to be
That's
distracting. All right. Okay. Just let me know, and I'll just turn it off.
No worries. No worries.
But Annie Hall is another one that I'll connect to your work, at least Molly and Max, because obviously, Woody Allen, what's he known for? Writing, these really well-written dialogue pieces, typically about love. And Annie Hall is probably his magnum opus, and he released that. That was pretty early in his career, right? If not one of his first.
Yeah, I I don't know the exact timeline of his career anymore. It's been a minute since I looked at it, but he had a number of kind of very broad comedies that he made, like Sleeper, and I don't even remember exactly what his first film is, but I think Annie Hall is kind of his first big masterpiece, and that was one of the first times that I realized I was like, oh, there's a person behind this movie, and they have a unique perspective on the world. And you grow up watching very kind of I don't know, simplistic love stories that are not really about, they're with archetypal characters, and those are great. I still really love those, but I think Annie Hall was the first time I saw like a really complex love story that felt really unique and specific, and it was also one of the first movies I saw that like New York felt like a real character in it, and it felt like a very exciting place to be, and sort of captured the vibe of the place. And so definitely part of the reason why I moved to New York is because I love that movie, and I love the world that it kind of showed me of neurotic people on the Upper East Side. Even though I didn't actually ever move up to the Upper East Side. I lived in downtown Manhattan, and then I moved to Brooklyn pretty soon afterwards. But I still feel like very nostalgic for that side of New York, and I think part of it definitely lives on in Brooklyn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really great way to put it, where he makes New York like a character, like a secondary character, because that, I think in any type of film, when the setting itself becomes a character, I think that takes like a very talented type of filmmaker to do that. And
yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think New York is a film, it shows up on screen a lot, but I don't feel like, I think a lot of films that show New York often are not made by New Yorkers, and so they don't really know what to actually focus on, and it ends up kind of being like a show the tourist destinations of and show a kind of idealized version of it, but they don't really know the intricacies of what it's actually like to live here, and all of the great diversity of people and diversity of ideas, and diversity of locations too that New York has to offer. Right.
And before I jump off your top 5 here, I just want to do a shout out to Jurassic Park, because that obviously, you seemingly a fan of sci-fi, I mean, that's like for its time, being able to age as well as it has, I think that says something. And I mean, Steven Spielberg's kind of a one of a kind, so you get it, but it's just I grew up with that one too. I was a kid when that one came out, so you best believe I had all sorts of toys and shit from the first 3, no, the first 2 at least. So
yeah, I mean, to me, it's like one of the best science fiction kind of stories ever told, and it is kind of this reboot of Prometheus or Frankenstein, and kind of this archetypal story of stealing fire from the gods, or playing with science, and this kind of cautionary tale. But I think it finds a lot of humanity even in its villains, and on top of that, it is just such a thrill ride. It really, every time I watch it, I feel like I notice something new and different, and it is it has a lot of heart to it, even though it has dark subject matter. I think it's a really kind of hard fine line to walk of something that's essentially a horror movie, but still a very kind of like family friendly one. So I think it's a feat in many ways, and there's only 8 minutes of dinosaurs in the whole movie. It's it's and it's because you care about the characters, and they really know how to build them up, and it's just a great example of less is more. And there's so many great kind of lessons you can take from that film on every level. The blocking and the staging is incredible. The character design is incredible. Just that opening sequence sets the stage for the whole movie. I feel like, I just, try to go watch that movie once a year at least. And it really inspires me whenever I see it.
Yeah, definitely. And that's crazy about the 8 minutes because I've never looked into that. But that reminds me, I don't know what the number is for Godzilla minus one. That's another movie where you have at the center Godzilla, but you actually care about the people. Like, you don't want Godzilla to destroy the city because you're like, oh shit, I like these characters. And
definitely, yeah.
It's rare because so many, and I love monster movies. I love sci-fi monster movies, and very rarely do they nail it where you get a compelling creature and you get compelling characters that you care about. So I
definitely. Yeah, no, it's really hard to find that balance, but all the best ones do understand that you know, it's the people are just as important as the monster, and they can't be given, you know, they can't be second in line.
Right. And have you read the original book by Michael Crichton?
I have, but it's been a very long time, so I don't honestly remember kind of like what the differences are. You know, but have you read it?
Yeah, I read it, and a lot of the central stuff is similar, but there's a couple scenes that, like, there's a whole sequence in a raptor's nest in the book, and the climax is different. And Hammond, do you care if I spoil the book at this point?
No, go for it.
Okay. Hammond dies at the end of the book, so he doesn't live, and you see him in the second one and whatever. I forget what kills him, but it's kind of like anticlimactic, and I think that might have been intentional.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like it's known as one of those movies that's like better than the book, and you know, I obviously can't weigh in on that, but I think that's also very, very rare. You know, and I think Spielberg just has like an incredible sense of story and understands like what's most important, and really knows how to build a scene and build a sequence and really prioritize what's most important, because I think that ultimately is what a director does, is tell people where to look and tell people what to care about and who to care about. And he's, you know, it's kind of insane that he made that movie the same year that he made Schindler's List. Yeah. And was like, you know, going back and forth between them. It's just insane.
And they both came out being incredible for cinema, and like they're completely different, like literally opposites. Because Schindler's List, not only the story's so different, but even like the decision for black and white as opposed to, you know, just a normal Technicolor movie like Jurassic Park. It's just, I still think he's got it. I'll watch anything he releases now, but it's just one of those things where from the beginning to now in his filmography, I mean, there's some movies I don't like as much, but he goes out there and you could see his technical prowess in everything that he does.
Yeah, totally. And that's the thing, is I'll always show up for one of his movies, and it'll be interesting and well made no matter what. And, you know, some of them are incredible masterpieces and some of them are a little bit less so, but I still think he's firing on all cylinders. And you know, just The Fabelmans was incredible. Like, you know, Tintin, I mean, he's someone who's constantly challenging himself and doing different things, and, you know, everything still feels like him, but he's, you know, really trying out, still being very ambitious and doing that over the course of 30, 40 years. Like, it's just insane. You know, that's the dream.
Yeah. And before I move to this next question, with The Fabelmans, also gave us what I think is the best freaking David Lynch cameo that you could ask for.
Yeah,
that's the best part of the movie, and that's at the very end. But that whole sequence, and when he's walking in the alley, the horizon's in the center of the screen, and then the camera shifts. Oh, I love that so much.
Definitely. No, it's great that they got David Lynch to do that, and you know, I think that's what's so fun too, is like, you know, clearly David Lynch respects Steven Spielberg, and like you couldn't imagine two more different filmmakers. Right. And I think sometimes when people are in film school, they think that those kind of two types of filmmakers are in opposition to one another, but really, you know, a great filmmaker loves a great movie and understands that a movie can be a variety of different things, and that there's not only one way to make a film.
Right. I agree, and I'm still here. Just if you didn't notice, my webcam went out for good. So
no worries. Oh, there's Ben.
Yeah. I'll move on to the next, and I'll troubleshoot this while I ask you the questions. But okay. So the next question I have here is, obviously you're partial to sci-fi, and a lot of your short films and Molly and Max are very sci-fi centric. What was your introduction into sci-fi? What gravitates you towards that genre?
I think Star Wars was really the first big sci-fi kind of franchise that I found, and I just fell in love with the world like so many little kids do, and it blew my mind when it was revealed that Darth Vader was Luke Skywalker's father. And I even, like, when I was a kid, I loved the prequels, and I would draw Star Wars fan art and design my own spaceships. And I think Star Wars especially is such a mythic story and operates on several different levels, but it ultimately has great characters, the original three, and really does, I don't know, I think it like almost hits people on a religious level, and that's why it has such a fervent fan base, because I think it talks to a lot of those kind of bigger questions that religious texts sometimes do. So it makes sense that lots of people are kind of arguing and trying to reinterpret it and want their version of it over someone else's version of it. But I think that really, I know it's science fantasy, but that to me, I've always been more into kind of the soft side of science fiction rather than the hard side. I love Kim Stanley Robinson and Andy Weir and stuff like that too. I still read that, and I really, really enjoy it. I don't think I could ever write something that's hard sci-fi. Maybe if someone else wrote it, I could direct it, but to me, like, what's always most important is just the emotions and the characters and the storytelling, and everything kind of has to come out of that. And so I love science fiction as like a metaphor to explore different topics. I love it as a way of satire and social commentary. Star Wars is about fascism and the rise of fascism, and do you work together with people and cooperate, or do you choose selfishness and tyranny instead? So I think those are relatable themes, and they're still unfortunately very relatable in this day and age. So I think science fiction has always been a way to kind of comment on society and hold a mirror up to it. And it does all great kind of science fiction can make you realize how much of your world is constructed to begin with, in the sense of whether it's gender norms or sexuality, or the way that a society is built, kind of makes you take the zoom out and look at your world from a slightly different angle. And I think that to me is really intellectually stimulating, and also escapist at the same time. I think you get that additional perspective on your reality by kind of stepping outside of it, and that is just inherently kind of thrilling to begin with.
Yeah, and that just the way that not only is it able to put a reflection up to the current world, but there's a sense of hope with some sci-fi where it gives us a utopia in the future, but then there's also a sense of pessimism with how they they'll construct like post-apocalyptic stories or dystopian type of sci-fi novels and things of that nature. It's awesome. I love it, and I think that the fact that you're able to even with science fantasy, there's a certain element of like technology, and this might be something we could get to one day that makes it feel grounded in a sense while being so fantastical, and I love that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's like Asimov, or one of the original science fiction guys, who's like, any technology that's sufficiently advanced is like indistinguishable from magic, and I think that's very true. Where like you look at our phones and you have no idea how they actually work, on a very deep level, but we just kind of accept it. And there's plenty of things like, in 2001, they had the video screens, and at one point that was science fiction, and, someone came up with that idea, and then now it exists. It's totally possible. So, hopefully we can get some jetpacks in the future.
Right. Or something running simultaneous to that. Right. And I think that Isaac Asimov, he's one of my favorites. I've read a couple. I want to read more, but the thing about hard sci-fi, I love it conceptually. It's a little harder to read because they're so dry, but I understand that they're so dry because they're there to be like, this is the hard sci-fi shit. We're going to be a little light on everything else, but
I think some of the, I'm definitely not an expert on hard sci-fi, but I really love Kim Stanley Robinson, and I think he does an amazing job of having really compelling, realistic characters that have a lot of depth to them. And, the Mars trilogy is really, really amazing just in terms of all the research he did, but it also has great characters that you really want to follow, and you follow them over the course of like a couple hundred years. And, I think different hard sci-fi authors, kind of their mileage may vary when it comes to stuff outside the science, but I think the best ones really do kind of understand that there is a science to, creating a great character.
Right. And I think that Arthur C. Clarke mostly hits the target with that, with, like Rendezvous with Rama, his 2001 novels. I actually read all of them probably about 10 years ago. I think there's 5. 2001, 2010. And I know the last one's 3001. I don't remember the inner 2 that I can't think of. I don't remember what the dates were for that, but I think
I haven't read those, but I'm very curious. I also really want to read Rendezvous with Rama because Denis Villeneuve is going to be making that into a movie. So
yep.
I'm very excited for that.
Yeah. That's going to be incredible. And with hard sci-fi for the, more contemporary authors, Andy Weir, I'm glad you mentioned him because he toes that line perfectly, because usually like with The Martian and Project Hail Mary, love both of those, but there's a central character and you get a lot of depth with that character, because you're basically with them in their predicament, but he also gives you a lot of good sci-fi, or a lot of good science, you could say.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, that's what's so cool, is just the amount of imagination that goes into stuff that, I mean, it's not even like, in some senses, it's just taking something to its logical end. But I do think that in itself requires imagination to think 2 or 3 or 4 or 500 steps ahead, and, really kind of think through that problem solving of what would I do in this crazy situation. So I'm really excited for the Project Hail Mary movie, and I'm, Lord and Miller are 2 really great directors. So I'm, we'll see. Hopefully, maybe we'll get another case of even better than the book.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. Did you read the book? You read the book, right?
Project Hail Mary, yes. I haven't read The Martian.
Okay. So with Project Hail Mary, the thing I'm worried about, we didn't really see much of it, but I'm just worried how they're going to do Rocky, and the communication between Rocky and I know Rocky. I don't know the guy's name. I don't remember his name, but
yeah.
The way they did that communication with like it was like like singing. It was like notes, kind of. That's going to be interesting. Totally. How they do that.
Definitely. I mean, I think if anyone could do it, it would be Lord and Miller. They come from an animation background, so I think they're really visual filmmakers, and I think they really understand an audience's attention span. So I think they, I'm sure they'll come up with something really interesting and unique and creative. And their movies always have such a good pace and such a good rhythm.
Yeah. A part of me isn't happy about this, because I just want them to make 23 Jump Street, because I love 21 and 22 Jump Street that they did. And I guess the credit scene in 22 Jump Street is kind of like, that's why there's going to be no sequel. But those guys are great at what they do, so I'm looking forward to it. And staying kind of on that sci-fi thing right now, when it comes to visual effects, I also noticed in a quick glance on IMDb, so I don't know how thorough, this is, but it seems like you're working with a lot of similar folks on each project in the visual effects department. Or at least I saw one person who helped with Alpha Squadron and Molly and Max, maybe. I don't remember. It was at least two, but I'm saying this just to lead to the question, like, as you as a director, kind of, how do you find the right aesthetic for the picture, and what's that workload like, and how do you ensure that, like I mentioned when I wrote out the question, that there's no crunch or stress in the work like you might see in bigger studio projects like Marvel or something like that. Just as the director, how do you lead that?
Yeah, totally. It's a good question. I mean, the shortest answer is that we have an extremely small team that's mostly me and one other person, Zach Stoltzfus, my director of photography. So
that's the guy that's the guy that I saw, I think.
Yeah. So Zach and I have been working together for 15 years at this point, and he worked as he was like the dolly grip on set for my NYU thesis, and then he ended up doing a bunch of the visual effects on my NYU thesis, and then he decided he didn't really want to do VFX anymore, so he became a DP. And so then we started working together as director and DP, and he wouldn't do, or he just, we got other people to do VFX if we needed it. And then, so we've worked in commercials together, and then started making, shorts. And Molly and Max, we basically started, I started doing the visual effects for it, and I wanted to hire Zach and work with him simply as a DP because he's a great DP. And then as I started telling him about how I was going to do the visual effects, he was, very diplomatically, would say, well, you could do it that way, or you could do this slightly different way that might save you a lot of time. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great, but I don't know how to do that. And he's like, all right, well, let me just show you. And then little by little, he got more and more invested, and ended up really kind of taking over as the visual effects supervisor. And so 90% of the VFX in Molly and Max were done by me and him. And, once we got into South by Southwest, we had like a deadline of when we had to finish it by. But until then, the strategy was really to kind of spread it out over a long period of time. And so before we went and shot all the actors, we had 18 months of kind of soft prep where we were doing, experiments, and we'd go shoot, some miniatures one or 2 days of the week, or, and would go and test things out. And it was just me and him, and we used his camera that he owned, and we shot it at a friend's office who had some extra space so that we could store a bunch of crap there. And, we were able to kind of figure out what are the workflows and systems that'll kind of save us a bunch of time, and, understand that, it's not gonna, the strategy has always been for all of my VFX work is that we're not going to try to compete with Marvel, and we're not going to try to make something that looks like a Christopher Nolan movie. We're going to try to make something that looks handmade and looks different, and, is a strength, and, is a feature, not a bug. And so, that has always been kind of the process is, how can we figure out how to do this with our limited VFX knowledge and our limited skill set. And, we've learned a number of these programs, and, I'm very proud of the VFX, but neither of us really want to be professional VFX artists. We'll maybe do a gig here or there if it's really simple and straightforward for somebody, but, neither of us really have those skills to, be put onto any project and make it happen, which is like what you really need if you want to be a VFX artist. So for us, it's always like a matter of, okay, how can we do this even though we're not real VFX artists? What are the plugins? What are the things that can get us 80% of the way there that kind of makes our life a little bit easier? And then we'll tweak it and dial it and make it look specific, and not make it look like it was just, a preset completely. So, a lot of it comes down to kind of the design of it, and then making sure that we aren't, filming things that we aren't capable of pulling off. And so part of that is, again, that testing process where we try something out, and then if we can't pull it off, then I rewrite the script so that we don't do that, because we know it's not going to look good. And so there's kind of this, iterative process and this feedback loop. And I think it's always, there's always the triangle of like fast, good, and cheap. You can only pick two. And if you want it to be good and cheap, then it's going to take a long time. And that was really kind of our strategy with a lot of the stuff we've done, which is, unless you have a festival premiere that you have to hit, like take your time, don't have a life outside of work, go sit in the park and go for a walk and not be just at your computer all the time, and do it at a pace that is healthy. And it's going to take the amount of time that it's going to take. So, that was really the strategy. And then, for the other 10% of the stuff that we needed other people for, it's the same thing where like the stop motion robots, that was, stop motion animation's a very specialized thing that we didn't feel qualified to do on our own. And so I worked with a guy that I found online who was working out of South Korea, and his buddy who was working out of Connecticut, and we sent them the shots, and they both had other jobs, and it was kind of like, whenever you can get to the shot, like as long as we get it done within the next 2 years, like that's what we need. And that those sequences took like 12 to 14 months, and so we were building out those stop motion sequences before we ever shot any of the actors, and we're able to then just drop it in little by little as they were finishing those shots, and we could integrate those animated robots like into the rest of our workflow. So yeah, just we tried to piece it together little by little, but it's hard to find VFX artists because most VFX artists want to work in Nuke or more complicated software that me and Zach don't really know. And so, that's going to be the question of how can we scale up and make the team a little bit bigger, but kind of keep things simple at the same time.
Right. And I think that, that I love a lot of what you said there, because it gives a charm to the movie, obviously, when you have a team that, a small team that cares more about the mental state of the people working on it as opposed to getting it out. Right.
Yeah.
And when you were accepted into South by Southwest, what was the window then to get it like completed? What was that deadline? How long did you have?
So I think we had like 6 weeks at that point, and we still had like 500 shots. And so at that point we went into overdrive, but it was something where also like Zach and I both owned a significant amount of the movie, and so it wasn't like I was, he had as much kind of skin in the game as I did, and would also get rewarded economically if the movie sold. So I think after 2 years of taking it little by little, we finally had a deadline, and then we kind of ramped it up, and I bought a second computer, and I set up a desk behind me and was rendering stuff on one computer, and then would go and render it on the other computer. And then Zach had 2 computers that he was working off of. And so it was definitely a mad dash to the finish line. And we finished the movie 3 days before we premiered it. And we were the last movie to turn it in to the people, because when you get in, they're like, send in your DCP 2 weeks before the screening. And we were basically like, what is the absolute last second that we can turn it in? Because 2 weeks, having 4 weeks to finish this versus 6 weeks to finish it is a very big difference. And so we're going to need every single second of that. So luckily, they were basically like, we'll make an exception and you can turn it in very close to it, but we still need to do like the technical check and make sure that it works. And so the whole time we were screening it at South by, it was like, oh my God, is anything going to go wrong? Like that whole first screen was just like, please don't mess up. I hope it works. And it all went great. So I was very happy that we got it done. And, I think you can kind of endlessly tweak things. So it was nice to kind of have a deadline and made it so that we really got everything done. But Zach really is the one who is a genius when it comes to VFX, and he really kind of elevated the level to this a little bit slightly more realistic compositing style and lens flares and kind of the look of the film. It looks, if there's a VFX in the shot in the movie that you're like, oh my God, it looks amazing, it's a Zach shot. And if you're like, that one looks a little rough, that's probably a me shot. So, I'm good at, just kind of doing the rote, messy work that needs to get done. But, I think a lot of it also comes down to kind of like, again, we just design it to be within our kind of skill set.
Right. And from the conception of the project, I'll save this for later because I have more Molly questions later, so I'll just save that for later.
Sure.
But awesome though, and yes, I appreciate the VFX, from both of you because it looks great. Is there a Blu-ray or 4K physical media available for it?
There is, yeah. I think it's on like Blu-ray.com. I'm not exactly sure where, but I know I have one sitting on my shelf, so it definitely exists. And there's some additional kind of behind the scenes stuff on there and a blooper reel. So there's and a director's commentary, too. So, yeah, I'm sure if you Google it, it'll come up somewhere. I think, it's been a minute since I've checked.
What about 4K? Would there ever be a plan for that? I hear that 4K costs a lot more to get printed as opposed to Blu-ray.
I don't think there's any plan for that right now. You never know. Maybe for the 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll be at 8K by then.
8K, 16K. It depends how far they want to go. But awesome. I mean, I'll be looking forward to that. Something else that I picked up on your filmography was season 3 of a show called Snatchers, but it says on your website that season is unreleased. Are you able to talk at all as to why that, remains unreleased? Because that was 2018?
Yeah, it was 2018. Yeah, it's a sad story. Although it was a great experience. I mean, basically, I got hired to direct the 3rd season of a digital show that was on Verizon Go 90, which was like a platform that popped up that Verizon spent literally $1 billion trying to make popular, and no one has ever even heard of it. And
I haven't heard of it, so that's crazy.
Yeah, it was the Quibi-esque disaster before Quibi. Basically, the 2 guys that hired me were writers and directors, and I got to go out to Utah and film the 3rd season of the show, and it was one of the best experiences ever. I got to play with stunts and, alien puppets, and it was a really, they let me kind of have complete control over the writing of it, but they were also very supportive, and they had a whole crew that they'd worked with on season 1 and 2, and I was the new person coming in, and they were all so friendly and welcoming, and we're all still like friends to this day. And it really was just kind of like a dream come true in terms of like finding great collaborators. I had so much fun doing it, and I think it turned out really well. Unfortunately, right as we were finishing the show, Verizon went under, and the producers ended up taking season 1 and season 2 of this web series and combining it into a movie, and that played at South by Southwest in 2019. And the movie's great. It's on HBO Max. I had nothing to do with it. It is the first 2 seasons. It's such a fun movie. It's really, really over the top, insane, but really smart. It is feels like a Sam Raimi movie. Just really, really fun. And but as a result of them putting season 1 and 2 together into a movie, season 3 was kind of this sequel to a movie that was a web show, and it basically kind of got buried and is sitting on a hard drive. So it unfortunately will never really be released. And I've got a lot of good experience and a lot of good memories and a lot of friendships out of that experience, but it was very sad to not be able to kind of share it with the world, because I think it turned out really well. I think season 3 was a fitting sequel, and I wish we could have gotten $200,000 more to go and film a couple more episodes and then turn that into a full sequel. But Warner Brothers just was never, it just kind of got caught in the shuffle of reorganizing within this giant corporate structure, and unfortunately was a victim to it. And so I don't think it'll ever see the light of day, unfortunately. But I've come to peace with it. But it sucks to spend 9 months, working on something that you're really proud of that you can never really show to people.
Yeah, but at least out of that experience, you said that you're still friends with the creators, and the experience itself was good, which is always a great takeaway, regardless of what the end product or lack thereof ends up being. So it's good to be able to walk away with that. But yeah, too bad they couldn't just turn season 3 into like a movie or something to follow up.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, that's unfortunate, but that's the nature of the beast, I guess, when it comes to these studios and their ideas. And then you have your Quibbies and whatever this one was called, Verizon 90, you said?
Verizon Go 90.
Go 90. So that was it was like just like a streaming app or something.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like a Netflix for your phone. And so the whole Go 90 was like turn your phone 90 degrees.
Okay.
So there was a number of shows on there. I think most of them weren't that great, but this show Snatchers was really fantastic. So it's it's a bummer that my season got shafted a little bit, but it's so it goes.
Yep, nature of the beast, right?
Yeah.
So you have an extensive portfolio of advertisements, and you talked a little bit about it before. What is it like going from that form of media to film and TV? And out of those three, just like, when you jump in between them, what do you like? What do you dislike? How would you rank those three forms, I guess, would be my question.
Yeah, I think advertising sucks and I hate it. I think making stuff is fun no matter what. And so even if I'm making like a commercial for Subway sandwiches, like making anything is a good time, and getting my friends paid is a good time, and getting paid is a good time, and working with actors is a good time. And so I love making stuff, and so if it's an advertisement and I can get paid for it, then that's awesome. What I really don't like, though, is the kind of industry that's built up around advertising, and specifically like how shittily it treats directors, because you have to kind of spend all of this time and energy pitching for jobs and trying to, it's called getting a triple bid job, where they make you pitch against 2 other directors, and half the time they've already decided who they're going to pick, and they're just kind of wasting your time. And so directing the ads is a good time, but getting the job is miserable and really exploitative, and you don't get paid for all of that time and energy. And sometimes you put all this effort into it, and then it doesn't even get, they decide to shelve it before they and not even make anything. And so that side of it I really don't like. I have always kind of looked at advertisements and branded content as just a way to support myself while I'm pursuing my main priority, which is film and TV. And so it's a good way to get experience. It's a good way to work with new people and learn things, but there's a lot of kind of bullshit around it. And so it has its pros and cons, but really, if I never had to direct another ad again, I wouldn't be too sad about it, because what my main priority is making movies and telling stories and not selling products.
Yeah, I respect that. And it's unfortunate that this day and age, there's that toxic work culture of, like you said, being exploitative with this process. I feel like that's old news. Like, why are we still doing that? Makes it, maybe they think that, I think, and this is a lot of corporations, they think that competition breeds better results, but I think that it's counterintuitive to compete in an area where you're trying to create something. I don't think you're going to get the best results if you're like just trying to outdo the other guy,
Yeah, totally. I mean, I also think like if that is your philosophy, then you should pay those people.
Right,
if you want to do that, then fine, but like that you're making people do work for you, on the assumption that it's going to lead to money, when I'm like, you would be much more selective about who you ask to do that if you had to pay them. And so I will gladly pitch on stuff if I was getting paid for it. And it doesn't even have to be that much, but the amount of time that you put into it is so much that, it just feels very unfair. All the agency creatives are getting paid to review your pitch. So why are you not getting paid to do that pitch?
Right. That's really not fair at all. But on a lighter note, I noticed that you do teaching. So what inspires you to teach? Writing a comedy, going from shorts to features, VFX. You have a diverse catalog of courses that you've done and you are currently doing, like the upcoming Brooklyn Comedy Collection 7-week class in September to October, I believe. Is this stuff that you discovered in the industry, stuff passed down to you, and perhaps any academic studying you've done, or just kind of what I'm asking is where this desire to teach comes from? And what are you teaching exactly? Where did you get all that wisdom?
Yeah, totally. I mean, basically, I went to film school and, generally had a positive experience and met a lot of great people, but there was still a lot of stuff that I wasn't taught in film school. And, I realized that every year more and more that as soon as I got out of film school. And so the first kind of seminar I did was just a kind of case study making of making Molly and Max, and that has been kind of adapted into the shorts to features class that I teach at the Gotham once a year. I was asked to speak at a conference, and so I the first version of that I went and talked to the conference, and really the idea was, what's the lecture that I wish I had been given after I got out of film school about how movies are actually made in 2015 or 2020, and what are the things that I wish I had known when I'd started out, and that I didn't get from a film school experience. And so that was just the process of going from shorts to features is a really gargantuan task that took me 10 years to figure out. And if I can help other people save a little bit of time doing that, then that feels really nice. I find teaching rewarding in a way that I don't really find, directing commercials or pitching on commercials rewarding. Right. So it's a little bit more like craft focused, and it's about the actual making of things. That's more fun. And so I teach that. I teach a visual effects class that's kind of, again, like, I never set out to be a VFX artist, but I ended up acquiring a lot of stuff about that. And I think even if you don't want to be a VFX artist, if you want to be a director, understanding how to work with visual effects, it's, going to be a really good, useful skill. And so, I teach that at the Gotham again once a year. And, that is, again, a class that I wish I had been able to take when I was starting out that could help me wrap my head around things. I teach this class at Brooklyn Comedy Collective, which is like a 7-week screenwriting class. And, same thing. I went to film school, took a bunch of screenwriting classes, didn't come out of film school with a good idea of how to structure a screenplay, and really felt like there was something lacking there. And so I wanted, I had to kind of build up those skills just by, reading every single book I could find and figuring out what worked for me and ways to think about story structure and screenplays that, I wanted to kind of share with other people. So, it's really fun, and it's really cool to work with other writers and help them on their journeys and help them figure out the kind of movies that they want to make. And, it also pays a little bit, not a lot, much less than directing commercials, but it is an additional kind of income stream where I can, make a little bit of money and, get some, accomplishment and something that feels rewarding to do in the moment as well.
Yeah, and that's always great too, to do what you love, but also try to inspire that in others. And have you been doing this long enough where you've seen, like, I don't know, a student of yours, someone who took your class, they went on and they released something or published something that you were able to look at? Or
I've had some really talented students. I mean, I only started teaching the screenwriting one like a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years. And so I haven't really had anyone who's had like a breakout success yet, but I think it's been really nice to kind of keep in touch with students and see, that what they're working on. And I really think that some of them are going to go on to do really great things.
Yeah, and I think that that's the best part of being a teacher is, you are what they grow beyond is a quote that I really love, because I would say that that's the point of it, right? You're out there to teach someone to be better than you. That's the goal. Otherwise, you fail in a sense, right? So I think that's great. Now, jumping back to Molly and Max, I don't know if I've said it before, but I love that movie. It was one of those surprise hits where I remember watching the trailer and seeing the premise and the sci-fi element of it, and I was like, what the hell is this? Hell yeah, let's go. And then I finally got to watch it. I think I rented it on VOD, but we talked a little bit about why you're into sci-fi. First off, what made you want to write this romance, and what was the genesis of this project? What was the start of it? When were you like, I'm gonna write this thing that two lovebirds in the future or whatever?
Yeah, totally. I mean, so I, grew up watching big budget action adventure movies like Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Jurassic Park, and that's really kind of what made me fall in love with movies for the first place. And then as I got older, I kind of found myself gravitating towards stuff that was a little bit more character driven, stuff like Annie Hall or Y Tu Mama Tambien or Amelie, things about people living in real life cities and walking around complaining about their therapists. And so, I've always kind of loved those two different types of films. And basically I was trying to get another film made for like 6 years that was like an adaptation of my NYU thesis. And I was just like hitting roadblock after roadblock. And then it looked like finally it was going to maybe come together. And then COVID hit and the whole thing fell apart. And I went back to kind of the drawing board. And as I was, in COVID lockdown, we rewatched When Harry Met Sally. And I realized I was like, this is essentially a mumblecore movie where it's just two people talking to each other, but it doesn't feel like a mumblecore movie. It feels like this grand old Hollywood kind of romance. And it's so character driven, but it moves at such a great pace. And it doesn't kind of fall into any of those mumblecore traps that I felt like, were things that I was trying to kind of avoid as an indie filmmaker. And so, it kind of came from this idea of like, if I were to remake When Harry Met Sally, but do it in my voice and my style, like how would I do that? And how can I explore some of the same ideas of, the line between friendship and romantic relationship, and how has that evolved since the 90s when the original came out? And so how can I update that for today? And, for me, naturally, it's like I've always tried to make movies that are expressions of kind of like of feelings and taking sci-fi as a way to explore metaphors and situations and and root it all in character and feeling and experience. And so I never really considered making it in New York in 2025 or something, like, set in present day. But to me, it was just like, oh, this is a great way to explore these characters, and I can do it, and I can use some of my visual effects skills that I've built up over the years and chip away at this little by little over a long period of time. So it was a long road, but it kind of came from this idea of being very cognizant of like, I'm going to make this movie 100% on green screen if I have to. And I'd spent a lot of time writing bigger movies that I wasn't capable of making. It was, a very conscious decision to kind of keep it simple and small and contained. And I didn't necessarily have the writing skills to do that until, I wrote that script, because I'd spent a lot of time writing stuff that, I needed millions of dollars to go and make.
Right. And I think that, knowing going into it that you don't want it to be this big thing, I think that helps. Because a lot of people, wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, they'll jump into a project thinking like, oh, I'm just going to write what I want. And then when they go and try to pitch it, you find out that you end up needing millions of dollars to get it done.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's me. That was exactly what happened with me. I wrote movies that were $5 or $10 million, and it's really hard to get a $5 or $10 million movie made.
Yeah. Actually, I talked to a producer just maybe a month ago that there's a show on Sci-Fi called Revival. It's a great show. I love it. Melanie Scrofano is in it. I think that's her name. But he's the showrunner for it, and his exact words were like, because he owns a production company, and he says that, someone will come to him with like a $20 million film, and he's like, we need like less than $5 million if we want this to like get made. That's just that's how it works. And how far into? So I know that you and Zach, right? You and Zach were doing a lot of preliminary work. At what point did you cast Zoja Mehmet? Am I saying that correctly?
Zasha Mehmet. It's okay. Everyone messes it up.
Yeah, and her co-star, who was just in Megan 2.0, I believe.
Aristotle. Basically, when did I cast her? It's hard, it all kind of blurs together, but we had done a lot of the prep work already. And, when we approached her, we were very much like, this might be a very small movie. It could be a little bit bigger. Maybe we're going to try to make a bigger version of it, but if we don't make the bigger version, it might be very, very small. And we want to make sure that you were kind of open to that. And so, she read the script and liked it, and we met and got along. And we had met before because my wife worked with her husband on something, and so we kind of had mutual acquaintances. And so she just wants to work on cool stuff, and she's very non-pretentious, and she's really down to earth, and she's so funny and smart and just such a team player, and she understands indie filmmaking and is really not like bratty or spoiled or anything like that. She just is so chill and hardworking, and really cannot be grateful enough to her for deciding to be a part of this movie. And it was a very, very scrappy affair. I mean, we only had 10 people on set, and she really was such a huge part of making it happen, and was just wonderful.
And did you guys film in New York?
Yeah, we filmed at a little small studio on 27th Street, and it was the size of a 1-bedroom apartment. It was very, very small. We shot 1 week on an LED stage in Bushwick, and then the other 3 weeks were at a Manhattan studio. So it was tight and it was cramped, but it was a small team of really dedicated people that really believed in it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Those are the best projects. And I imagine that, being such a small production, you're probably, I don't know, I wouldn't say close, but you're still, you probably still talk to the people that worked on this with you, right? That's how it is.
Definitely.
With a lot of these,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like we came out of it much closer, and we had almost all 10-hour days, and nobody, as far as I know, felt like they were unhappy with how they were treated. So, literally everybody on there I want to work with again. And it was such a good experience, despite how, difficult it was at the same time. So I'm really proud of, how, we all came out of it very much as friends.
Yeah, that's great. What do you have cooking? Is there a dream film you'd want to make if resources and money weren't an issue?
Yeah, I have my next project. My next script is basically ready to go, and we're sending it out to financiers right now. So hopefully we'll, get the rest of the money that we need for it within the next couple of months. So that's kind of my dream project at the moment, and hopefully we'll be filming that next year. But in the meantime, I've been getting really into Blender and 3D animation, and that's been a really fun way to kind of stay creative. And it's something that I can do basically by myself on a computer and you know, don't need a whole team of people. So I've been really enjoying doing that, and I'm kind of scheming to make a movie in Blender while I wait for my live action films to get made as well. So just trying to write new stuff and you know, hopefully get this next film off the ground.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely be looking forward to that. So yeah, good luck with all the financing, because that makes or breaks it, right? Depending on what kind of backing you could give for it. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, whether personally or professionally?
You know, I feel like I try not to put like timelines on anything anymore, because it's just a really great way to disappoint yourself.
Right, right.
So, you know, I came out of school and I thought I would be making my first feature by the time I was 25. And then, you know, it took me until I was 31 to actually do that. And so, you know, I hope, you know, I want to have a career where I can go and direct Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in the same year, and, you know, have a wide variety of different things. But I think I want to just take it one at a time and just focus on what's possible and what's in front of me. And, you know, I would love to direct huge movies and you know, be a blockbuster filmmaker, but I also would not die unhappy if I never direct a huge movie. I, you know, am more than happy to direct small idiosyncratic films that are, you know, unique and different. So, you know, I think sometimes that stuff is out of your control, and whether you know, get those opportunities or not can kind of come down to a roll of the dice and fate. So, you know, in the meantime, I'm just trying to kind of, you know, stay creative and stay working on stuff that I care about, and cross my fingers and hope for the best.
Yeah, beautifully put. Hell yeah. So here at the end of the interview, if you have any, you know, a website, social media, all that fun stuff, I'm giving you the floor again to you know, plug what you need to plug.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram at Michael Litwak, Litwak. And I have a mailing list on my website, which is www.michaellitwak.com. So I post on the mailing list like once every 3 to 6 months, maybe. But I post on Instagram a fair amount. But yeah, keep in touch, and you know, the Molly and Max is available on Amazon Prime and everywhere else that you can, you know, grab or rent movies. But thanks for, you know, getting the word out there and for watching the film. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And thank you so much, Michael, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. It was great talking with you.
Of course. Awesome. Have a great rest of your night.